Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Dax Show, the only live podcast based in China. In this week, we have got one special guest with us, and in this episode, we are coming to share something wonderful. As you know, we are based in China, the only live podcast based in China. In the year 1978, China was known as one of the poorest countries in the world. Currently in 2024, we can know China is one of the largest economy in the world. That is why today we are with our special guest, and he's no other person than the Eminence, known as Eminence. He has lived in China for several years, and today he's coming to share his personal experience with us about how China has been able to manage from the poorest countries into one of the largest economy in the world. He is a businessman and he's into business. If you want to do anything about business in China, you can reach him. Even though we are not coming to talk much about business, but in terms of business, he is an expert based in China. And without wasting my time, I'd like to welcome him. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to, inspire others, clarify some doubts, and let people know the truth about China. Before you go further to ask me any question, I want to lay a foundation. While I was preparing to come to China, there is this notion China is
Yes.
a poor country. And people will tell you that we see the Chinese in our country, they are into some mega type of jobs, they are into some odd jobs, they are doing some things which really doesn't befit the standard with which we are portraying. So going to China
Yes.
is a waste of time. So they tend to judge China based on what China was known some years ago, some decades ago.
Yes. Wow, that's so powerful. I can see today we are coming to learn a lot. Before we even talk about the things which has really changed China from the poorest to one of the richest country in the world, who is Daddy Eminence? In case somebody wants to know who he is.
Okay, yeah, my name's Are Martin. Yeah, I'm a graduate from the University of Boya in Cameroon. I moved to China in 2012, and I have been in China. Of course, I studied in the Chongqing Normal University, then moved to the Chongqing University. And
Yes.
after that, I've been in China trying to, impact my communities where I come from in one way or the other and to contribute to my own way of development. Presently, myself and some other Cameroonians, we have come up with an e-commerce app which is known as Lelemo. You can Google it. We are registered and licensed in China, and we have begun operating. But however, we had to halt operation because we want to develop the app to a certain standards. So very soon we'll unroll the app, which will be launched in Cameroon soon. China is already operational. We are hoping to get the US market and Nigeria. So that is the four countries with which we would be beginning. So also, I'm a creative writer. I write and then I sell, a freelance writer. I'm a content creator. And of course, I'm a data analyst. I specialize, so I work mostly with Tableau and this is business, Power BI, Power Business Intelligence.
Wow. In fact, guys, I must use this opportunity to applaud this man. In fact, in Africa, in terms of e-commerce, we are very slow in terms of that. And this is one of the men who is trying their best to bring e-commerce in Africa, especially based in Cameroon. And what when I went through the app, I was like, what? People are really doing very hard. People are really working very hard. So I must applaud you very much, sir, for the good work and trying to bring e-commerce into the continent of Africa and Cameroon at large.
Thank you.
When we talk about you coming to China, in which year did you even come to China?
Yeah, I came to China in 2012, but before coming to China, my primary school teacher has,
Yes.
caused me to crave, that desire to be in China. When we talk of the Great Wall, the way, I
Yes.
don't know, my primary school teacher seemed to have loved China. So I decided that when it will be time for me to travel out, I will come to
Yes.
China. China was very different in its way, very unique in its own system. So I wanted to experience, the Chinese
Yes.
culture. Coming to China, I had other opportunities, but I decided that China would be where I would come. And while I was preparing to come, I met some people who had been in China, and the impression which they gave me
Yes.
was very different from what you will meet people who have not been to China, what they will tell you. So I followed their advice and I came to China.
Wow. Then I must say you are really blessed and fortunate to have people who explain the positive side and the good side of China to you. So many of us, I personally, I love Chinese movies very much, but in terms of traveling to another country, China was not an option for me. America was just the option, the American dream, not China. So you, I must say, you are very fortunate and you had people to direct you in that way. You didn't have any side back, no fear, nothing. Wow, that's so interesting. So apart from that, you didn't have your parents or relatives being worried about you coming to China? Hello. Yes. I
Uh, I don't seem to get you. Seems there's some interference with the network.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was saying that.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yeah, I was saying that apart from your teachers giving you the positive side and meeting people telling you something much about China, you have your parents? What was your parents' response into your idea of going to China or
It
relatives?
was negative. All the family members, nobody was in support of me going to China, and everybody thought China was like a place of manual labor, hardship, difficulties. It was, many people look at China to be like a desert. So you are going there for, something very difficult. It was like you are opting to go to prison. That's how people
Yes,
looked at it. But the few people who I spoke to who had been to China gave me a different view. And beside, my greatest ambition from the influence of my primary school teacher has been to come to China, work on the Great
yes,
Wall, and then go back. So no matter the difficulties or challenges, I had as ambition to
yes.
come to China and then stand on the Great Wall, then I go back. So it was something which really pulled me to China.
Wow, interesting. And then that is so great that even upon all the negative response and all those, you still took that bold step to come to China. Now, after coming to China, what really shocked you about China?
Good. When I came to China, I discovered a lot of things. First, I discovered that our impression about China is different
Yes,
from the reality. You know, we looked at them to be like people who are suffering based on, when they come, especially for the construction work. So we look at them like people who are suffering. We look at the level of development based on what probably we have been seeing from the Western media. So when I came to
yes,
China, it was very different. And of course, I thought when I come to China, based on what I've been watching on their kung fu movies, I will see people
yes.
fighting on the street. So when I was like first day, second day, third day, and I saw nobody fighting on the street, I was like, what's happening? Why don't I see people fighting on the street? Because that was my expectation that I would just be walking on the road and then somehow I would just see people fighting. And
Yes.
for over a week, nobody was fighting. Then I was asking my friends, what's happening? I thought we were seeing people fighting on the street and those type of issues which we watch in the movie. But it was very different. I came to discover that the movie will portray something different and the reality
Yeah.
is very different.
Wow, interesting. Then the way you were very ready to see people fighting, then I must know that you were very ready to also fight. Wow, interesting. Wow.
No, I was
In
like,
fact,
I
I
wanted to
yeah.
see. I wanted to see, I wanted to pick out what we watch on the movie, like, some of those techniques, those movie tricks. I wanted to experience them live
Yes.
where there will be no tricks. So I was expecting to see people fighting to really actually witness real martial arts on the street. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I never witnessed that.
That's really true. I personally, I had that experience. I came and even after a year, I learned some little kung fu, and I was better than most Chinese. Even most Chinese didn't even know those that kung fu that I learned, and that is really really true. Apart from these challenges, China has been known, and as of now, known by some people as the poorest countries in the world. You have stayed in China for several years. What is the reality? Is China that poor as people still know it?
You see, when we go to economic terms, like they would say, developing country and developed country, China is a
Yes.
developed country. Let's forget about the Western media definition, because you cannot tell me that China is a developing country when, in terms of purchasing power parity, GDP in terms of PPP, China, is
Yes.
the first, and the second is America, and there is a 9 billion gap difference. When you go to nominal GDP, China is the
Yes.
second, America is the first, and China lags behind America by $6 billion difference. And then you have other countries that call themselves developed countries coming far behind China. So let's not be carried away by the Western media narrative or definition. China is a developed country. China is a very advanced economy. So what it is being labeled on China is different from the realities on the ground.
Wow. Interesting. I'm so happy I have a guest who is also sharing their experience because sometimes I make videos, real videos, where I'm showing them the daily life in China, the infrastructure, the subways, and people are saying that is propaganda. I don't really understand. Like I upload YouTube videos, they say this guy is being paid to do propaganda for China. And I don't get it. So I'm happy I've gotten someone who is also sharing their real life experience in China. In fact, indeed, I must also confirm that I don't know why they still consider China to be a developing country. Probably, maybe I don't know the criteria of which they use to determine a developed and a developing country. In 1978, according to history, China was known as the poorest. Now we know China as the largest exporter. Me in 1978, I wasn't there, but history tells us that. What do you think from your personal experience after working with Chinese, staying with Chinese, living in China and everything? What has been the major reason why China has been able to advance so fast within this short period of time?
Okay, thank you very much. I have lived in China for a long time and I have experienced for myself. So I am not talking like someone reading, some piece of literature written by somebody, but I am talking based on what I have experienced in China. There is a philosophy in China. It is not written anywhere. But if you live in China, you will know that that is a
Yes.
philosophy. Focus on what you know and perfect it. Then let our good learners focus on what we don't know and learn it well.
Please, sir, repeat that
Let me
again.
take you over. Now, this is a Chinese philosophy. Let us
Yeah.
focus on what we know and
Yes.
perfect it. And then let our good learners focus on what we don't know and learn it well.
Okay. Wow.
So Chinese society, there's this philosophy, it is not written anywhere, but if you live in China, you will discover it. They have two class. The class that knows how to do something. So the government encourages them to perfect it to the best level. And then there are those who are good learners. They identify what the Chinese don't know. What do they do? They encourage the Chinese to learn it well. So they focus on what they know to perfect it. and then they encourage their good learners to learn what they don't know, and they learn it well. Why has
Wow.
China developed so much from a poor country to a rich country? Now, if you look at during the 1978, the GDP of
Yes.
China was $190. At that time, it was compared to Bangladesh, Chad, and the poorest nation in the world. Within
Yes.
35 years later on, within 40 years later on, what has happened? The GDP of China today is over 6,000. You look at a very wide gap. But where is Chad today?
Very.
Where is Bangladesh today? Where are those countries? You realize that
Yes.
China has grown astronomically, while the other
Yes.
countries have just made very slight growth. They are
Wow.
still poor. What has contributed? Now, this philosophy which I have mentioned, when I came to China, I discovered something
Yes.
which has contributed a lot to the Chinese development. Now,
Okay.
when China began to open up, after the time of Mao, things were difficult. When China began to open up,
Yes.
first, they allowed what? Companies to come in. Labor is cheap in China. That is why today you discover that a lot of companies have their
Yes.
headquarters in China, their production headquarters in China. So they allow the
Yes.
companies to come in, and many nations discover that cost of production in China is very cheap. It is cheap, for
Yes.
example, a French company to be established in America, in China, an American company to be established in China, produce in China, ship it back to their country and sell. It was
Yes.
very, very cost effective. So
Cheap
China
labor.
opened up. Cheap
Yes.
labor. China opened up and companies came in. But the companies did not come in to dominate or to overtake. They instituted a policy. And what was this policy?
Yes.
In every top management, there should be at least
Wow.
two Chinese in the top management.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Before you even go there, the cheap labor, what do you think is the major reason why China is having cheap labor? Because I know other countries like India to have population just as China, but we have several countries with large populations. But what has been the major reason why there's that cheap labor in China? How is it that China is able to manage to have that cheap labor? I don't really get it.
Okay. Now, the reason for the cheap labor was because of poverty. There was serious poverty in China. And because there was
Okay.
poverty, people would do anything in order to earn their daily bread and survive. Therefore, labor
Yeah.
was very cheap. And because labor was very cheap, you know,
Yeah.
other countries exploited this cheap labor, brought in their companies and industries. And they brought in their companies and industries. You realize that the development of China started from what? From the cheap labor. They realized that, hey, what I can pay the level in China for a month,
Yes.
let us put in terms, maybe $10,000. But if that level was in America, I'll probably be paying $50,000. So why don't I
Wow.
take my company to China, $10,000, export it, and then sell and make a
Yes.
lot of profit? So you realize that
Okay.
what brought about development was cheap labor. This cheap labor attracted industry, and then you know what? It brought in the market. At that time, the institution
Yeah.
in China not very strong. They were not very solid as today because they needed to get out of poverty. And to get out of
Yes.
poverty, they needed something. China do not want to rely on foreign aids. Foreign aids come with some string attached to it. So China opened up. It
Yeah.
uses what it had, and what it had was cheap labor. And so those companies they came in. Now, when those
Wow.
companies came in, the Chinese had to institute a policy in every top management. Let us say within 10 top management, there should be at least
Yes.
two Chinese within the top management. This Chinese representative will ensure, will
Yeah.
try to formulate policies that are beneficial to their people. And
Yeah.
so, that leads to employment. As that employment was coming up, the market was being opened now. We realized that the weak institutions in China, started, becoming stronger because of what? Because of the market.
Wow.
And yeah, and then in the course of time, like the Chinese will say, let our good
Yeah.
learners learn what we don't know. They began looking at those sectors and then they began sending their own people to study in those sectors. After a long period of time, probably when the cycles of those companies must have expired and they are leaving, those Chinese who have
Yes.
been working will take over. And then when they take over now, that is how the development start to increase. Also, at the
Wow.
level of the
Bef-
local government,
before before I even allow you to move on, I'm wow, interesting. So others were thinking they are making use of the cheap labor. They were people, other investors, other countries were thinking, oh, this is cheap labor, so let's utilize this cheap labor. But indirectly, they were developing the country.
yes, if the labor wasn't, if China never had cheap labor, those companies couldn't have come and it wouldn't have given room for that expansion. Today, China is the factory of the world.
Yes.
China is the factory of the world. Why? Because of cheap labor. What started is what has continued today. Many companies
Wow.
want to produce in China because it is cheap to produce in China and then sell back to their own home country. So this is something which began not today, but which began because China was trying to get out of poverty and cost of labor was really, really down. And many countries exploited this cheap labor, but the policy makers in China allowed
Yes.
this cheap labor to continue because they knew that it was going to drive development. And it has contributed enormously and it still continues to the development of China today.
Wow. Then indeed, we must say that there's nothing like free. There's nothing like free because these investors were thinking they got something free, but they didn't know that they were even helping them in that way. Wow. You were talking about once investors came, they didn't allow them to just start a company. They
Of course, they were
made
contributing
their
to the
citizens
development.
in the top officials. Hello. Yeah, you were saying that once these investors came, they made a
Yeah,
policy.
hello?
Yeah, you were saying that what whilst these investors came, they made a policy in such a way that every Chinese will be in one of their companies as top officials. Wow.
Yes. And you see, that is a policy which is lacking in Africa. I have
Yes.
more points to give why China, has left from, I should say, a beggar to
Yes.
a cheerful giver. Yeah, China has left from a beggar and presently today is a cheerful giver. Now, when those companies come, they will ensure that their representative is in one of the top management in that company. Now,
Yeah.
the others who were there in that company, stealing technology, they were not just there working, but they were also stealing technology. And after a certain period of time, some of them would leave, go abroad, study, come back with that knowledge, and open up corresponding companies. So you realize that while other
Yeah.
countries were making use of the labor, China was making use of the cheap labor to gain technology and insight from these foreign companies that were coming. Now, one thing with us in Africa is that when companies come, we do not implement
Yes.
this policy. If we do implement this policy, it's going to drive development astronomically. Put aside corruption. Now,
Yes.
second point, which has contributed to the development of China. When I came to China, I discovered that
Yeah.
each
Yeah,
language,
sorry. Before you move,
yeah,
we have our viewers who are watching live. Fat Crack is saying, should I move from the UK to China? I know he's joking. He said the UK government are corrupted. Oh well. We have Manaz Kasmer saying hello from yeah to us all. So yeah, we can continue.
yeah, to move from UK to China, it all depends on the vision and the focus. Yeah, you don't just move because you think there are opportunities there. You move because you have a vision, you have a plan. What do you have next? There are people who have moved from China to UK, they found it difficult and they have returned. And there are people who have moved from China to UK and know they have expanded. So what
Yes.
matters is not just moving, but having a focus and a vision.
Yeah.
focus and the direction. Okay, now when I came to the Chinese, it is difficult to find
Yes.
foreigners doing what the Chinese can do in China. It is difficult. Now, one of the major employment is teaching English. That is because the Chinese themselves don't know English.
Yes.
So we have to teach English. But you look at from 2020, policies have changed. The Chinese have sent their citizens to learn English, and a lot of them are teaching English in the institution. The demand for English teachers has reduced drastically, and English is no more required in many of the entrance examinations. So people are still teaching English because the Chinese can't do it. You cannot just go and open a kiosk on the side of the road. It's not possible. There are few cities like in Guangzhou where you can have
Yes.
no business. But in other places, before you open a business, a Chinese must be your partner. You don't open companies in China without it. But let us take a comparison to Africa. The Chinese will come from the factory, every stage of the production, and they're even doing delivery. They're even
Yes.
doing returning and they even sell to the locals. So we are not involved in any stage of production. Like I said, myself and others, we have an e-commerce company, and our
Yes.
accountant is in Chinese. You cannot run a company in China without a Chinese being present. But in Africa, have whole line of production, stores, factories, and they only employ look to do the mega jobs. In China, it doesn't happen. The Chinese must be part of the company, even if it is not within uh, the license and registration, but within the Chinese government system, the Chinese is part of the company. This is something which has encouraged them to grow. It has no speed up employment because you must employ
Yes.
this Chinese. The Chinese must be paid, and the Chinese is not just unskilled labor; they are the top management. So this is one factor that has contributed. We don't do what the Chinese can do. We allow you to do only what they can do. So this is
Wow.
something which, if our African leaders can focus on that, we don't allow a foreign company to come and establish,
Yes.
and they don't allow you to compete with their citizens. No, they don't allow you. If you have to compete with their citizens, you have to meet certain demands, and then it should be a big company, not no. They don't allow you to do that. No, this retailing by the roadside, open a kiosk. We don't do that in China. It is only left for the citizens. So one thing that has contributed is that they don't allow you, the foreigners, to compete with their citizens.
Wow. Before I even allow you to continue, wow. That is so smart about China. They never allowed investors to just have full of their company. Indirectly, they were training their people. Wow. To
Yeah.
our viewers who are watching live, we have Fat Crack. He's saying that Mr. Eminence, will you move from UK to China to the UK? You have always got a room at my house. We have
Thank you.
JP
Very good.
Rugaba saying great. We have Joe's Connect Media saying nice one. Keep it coming. Wow, interesting. You have mentioned so major points that so many developing countries can learn from China's strategy. One is with their cheap labor, they make sure that their people had a share in the top officials in any business or any investor which comes to China. And they made sure that they were training their people indirectly. This is so wonderful and so smart. This takes critical thinking to do that. Wow. Yeah. So,
Okay.
what are some of the other reasons?
Now, some of the other reasons have been intimidation from the West.
Okay. How?
Now, let me say, now, when I think intimidation from the West, you realize that, especially America, they have this policy to sanction other nations that do not comply with their so-called democratic principles.
Yes.
You realize that Chinese have discovered that we cannot keep relying on others. We should do something for ourselves. Facebook
Yeah.
is not in China. It has been banned in China.
Yes.
Google is not in China, it is banned in China. Twitter is not in China today, which is X is banned in China. Now, what has happened when they ban something, they create something for themselves.
Yes.
In China, when you mention Google, YouTube, except those who are exposed, they don't know it. The Chinese have decided that rather than our people consuming Western products, let us create something for ourselves. Let us create something for our people. So when you mention a lot of the Western art in China, it is not known. Those who know it are those who have had exposure within
Yes.
the Western domain. People don't know what in China. Chinese don't know about laws of those who know what are those who are doing business and they have interaction with the outside community. If you mention Google, they don't know. Probably those who are in the university they are doing their research. But on average, Chinese have decided to create something for themselves because they don't want to be put at a position where by tomorrow you will deprive them of certain services. When you create Zoom, they will do something like I told you, they have this policy. Let our good learners focus on what
Yes.
they don't know and learn it well. So they are looking at what others are doing, and then they are doing something for themselves. And we have put up development. I will tell you that today, most of my best apps that I use are the apps made
Yes.
in China. They are apps made in
Wow.
China. In other apps, it is because I want to get onto the world. But when I am doing a lot of issues, things on my daily basis, I use the app made in China because they are integrated, they are advanced, they are cheap, they are free. So
Interesting.
they have decided to create a niche for themselves, so much so that they want to be self-sufficient without outside reliance, and it has contributed a lot to their development. Sometimes when I talk to people and I tell them that WhatsApp is not in China, we have to access it by VPN. People say, "Which type of a foolish and stupid country is that?" I said, "No, we know that we also are foolish and stupid because we have not learned to create something for ourselves."
Yes.
Today, if it's not more Facebook is no more, I will tell that communication in the whole of Africa will stop. People will stop communicating with their parents. People will stop communicating with their
Yes.
loved ones. But they have decided that nobody will deprive them of that. So they have created a means so that they themselves could interact among themselves. Today, if there's no WhatsApp, I will probably won't be able to talk to my loved ones, won't be able to talk to family siblings. If there's no Facebook, I won't be able to showcase this. But these things have been created by the West, or probably, let me say, they have been created by America. Chinese have decided that no,
Yes.
we won't be able to rely on outside interest. Let our good members develop what we like and we don't have. Another issue that has contributed to the development of China is that
Yeah.
at the level of the
Before I even allow you to go, that is really true. Recently, WhatsApp got some challenges, WhatsApp and Facebook, and so many businesses in Africa, especially, had so many challenges. They ran so many businesses were complaining that they ran at a very big loss because Facebook and WhatsApp just had some crunches within some hours, and due to that, it really affected businesses. So, in fact, you talking about them creating apps for themselves to the extent that even if Facebook, WhatsApp is not working, it doesn't affect them, has reminded me of that. Yeah, that is really, really true. That is really, really true. Wonderful. To our viewers who are watching live, a time will come if you want to join this live to add your contribution or your experience about why China has been able to advance from one of the poorest countries to one of the largest economy in the world. You can join through this live through this link sent in the description box, or you can comment in the comment section to add your contribution. We are joined with our special guest, Mr. Eminence, who has stayed in China for several years, and he is sharing his personal experience about how China has been able to advance from that poorest country to the largest economy in the world. Sir, must we say that China is really utilizing the disadvantages? The things we see is a disadvantage, they are utilizing it very well. For example, you mentioned intimidation. I'm from Ghana, and anytime they have countries like America is trying to, if you don't do this, we'll ban you. Like if you don't accept LGBTQ, we'll ban you. And our governments are afraid. They are worried because the US will ban them from that. But China never did that. China, when you intimate, when you say you ban them, they say okay and they accept that. This is so wonderful. I think developing countries must also learn from this aspect of China. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we really need to wake up because we can't allow a foreigner to come to the house, control everything they have, the stages of production, determine the price of oil. No, you will not do that in China. Now, you remember when Trump came to the presidency, the trade deficit of US to China was over 700 billion, and Trump was frustrated. He
Yes.
wanted to reduce this gap, and there were a lot of measures which he did, but he was not able to reduce the gap as significantly as he intended. Now, you see, when
Yeah.
I talk of integration, you know, at a certain point in time, the Chinese have been banned from certain services like Google. Now, if you remember,
Yes.
a few years back, I have been dealing with phones. I sell phones back home, but
Yeah.
presently, phones you cannot access Google with it because they have been banned. Now, in 2021, I had a Chinese student in
Yes.
works with, yeah, he worked with Alibaba, and then he was telling me that China is aware that they are under serious surveillance, and someday America may ban them from the operating system, Android and all this. So they are presently developing their own operating system. Actually, Huawei has already come up with an operating system, but it has a lot of work. But it has been tested. Somehow it is like, the Android phone of the 2014. So they are still working on it. So you see that whenever they realize that there's an intimidation, they work hard. You look at it, semiconductors. America is
Yes.
trying to restrict China from access to semiconductors. So why they were doing that, Huawei has already gone out, to come out with its own semiconductors, and you realize that the more you put pressure on China, the more it causes them to work hard. Coming from suffering, hardship, difficulties, they have learned to utilize the hardship to create something which is self-sufficient for them. So intimidation is something that helps them to do. When you intimidate China in a certain aspect, they don't complain, they don't come back and they sit back and then they find ways in which they can circumvent those barriers. They want to come up with something. Let me quote an example. When Elon Musk
Yes.
started Tesla EV car, and then the Chinese company started
Yes.
going EV car, Elon Musk made a mockery about them that it will never amount to
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
2022, if you compare the number of sales of BYD EV car, it surpasses that of of the American
Elon
company
Tesla. Yeah.
in Europe. When it comes to EV cars, when we talk of decoupling, why? Because the Chinese EV cars, they are cheaper, better qualities, and they are dominating the European and the US market. Why?
Yes.
First, labor is cheap. Now, averagely, the Chinese EV cars about
Yes.
30,000 euros cheaper than those made in America and those made in Europe. But they offer quality service than what the others do. And so today you hear of decoupling from China. Why? Because they say China is has overcapacity like the American Treasury will say that China
Yeah.
capacity overproduction. It's not because China has overcapacity. It is because cost of production in China is cheap, labor is cheap, and therefore they are able to utilize that and sell at a cheaper price. America should not blame China because the labor is cheap and therefore their products are cheap. Rather,
Yes.
institute policies that will also make your own cost of production very cheap. So now you
Wow.
realize the talk of decoupling from China is not possible. Now they are using a new phrase, de-risking. Let us not risk. Let us
Yes.
not put all the risk in China because if China takes a certain step, will fall back on us. So they have learned to go from intimidation. When you tell them that they are not able to do this, they will do it. Now remember the American space station, they deprived China from using it on the
Yes.
basis China, does not observe human rights, and then China is, somehow subjugating the people of the Xinjiang, the overall people. Today, China has built their own space station, Tiangong, and I think next year the American space station will no longer be effective, and Chinese space station will already be into use. So you realize that whenever you intimidate Chinese,
Wow.
don't give up. They find an alternative way. Soon, America will now need to rely on China's space station, for exploration, for the exploration trips. So you realize that these people that when you do something, they also want to do something.
Yes.
So they look at it. We have a lot of phone companies. The Chinese will have good Chinese phone companies that are doing things, as compared to the Western standard. So the people who have learned to grow from their difficulties and challenges, they do not surrender. They
Yes.
find a way to circumvent every hardship. Unfortunately, these policies, I don't know why our leaders are traveling abroad, they see these things, they don't happen. Again, let me tell you, as a of
Yes.
Chinese community, you don't have an account out of China. How can you be a member of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and you have a bank account in Swiss? Most of our leaders in Africa, their bank accounts are in America, in France. If not in China, you would think it's supposed to be circulating in the economy
Yes.
and go to benefit in another country. You don't do that in China. You cannot do that in China. If you have your companies outside,
Wow.
yes, your company
You
account, but
cannot
in the Chinese,
do.
you can never have an account out of China. It is not possible. You can't be a member of the party and have an account out of China.
Wow. You can never have a bank account outside China as a member of the
You can.
Communist People's Party. Wow.
You,
Must can we say that in fact suffering has helped China so much? Because from
yes,
all these intimidation, hunger, the several bans from the US government and all those things, these are sufferings. I think they didn't take these things lightly at the beginning, but that has really helped them. So, for me, in summary, I must say suffering has been a good help to them, to the Chinese government and the country.
yes. They have learned from their suffering and they have a policy. Like we see that they are saying that I think by is it 2025, they want to remove 400 people from an average income to become millionaires. They have their target. After 2025, they will have different targets. So there's a target with which they are removing a certain percentage of the people from probably the low class to the middle class, to an elite class. So they have that target. They want
Yes.
to remove they have to remove 400 million from an average class to become millionaires. And they are doing
Wow.
that. One thing with China is that, which I've learned and something which I hope we in Africa can institute is communal development, communal partnership. What do I mean? When
Communal
I came to China,
development partnership. Yes. What is that?
yes, when, when I discovered that three Chinese will
Yes.
come together, put things together, you know, open a school. When they open the school, the first year, the second year, when the school begins to expand, they open the second branch. Two persons can be managing one branch, one person is managing another branch. And then within the third year, they open
Yes.
another branch. Everybody now become a boss in a branch. Now let's come back to
Wow.
Africa. If you, myself, and some others, let us put funds together and carry out the development, what will be the first question? Who is going to be the treasurer? You see, if I say let us put things together, we organize a party, eat and drink, there is no doubt we will put the funds, we will go and contribute money to go to expensive partying and clubbing and drinking. But when I say let us put funds for development, we realize that the African mentality, we trust ourselves when it comes to partying, clubbing, expenses, but without everyone's capability, without everyone's consistency, when it comes to sustainable development. Somebody will say, no, if I put my money now,
Yes.
hey, this guy can go with my money. What happened? But when I said, let us put money for us to go to party, for us to go clubbing, for us to go to enjoyment, we do not have that substitution. So when it comes to development, we have separation. So within the Chinese community, they realize something. We must come together, put funds together, grow, in stages,
Yeah.
and then after a certain period of time, that will become more. Before you discover, 5 years later on, this person controls this person controls this person controls this, and then at that point in time, they can go their way because they have all been established. They have put their funds together. Together, they have been collectively, and now everybody is involved in one branch or the other, and that is how they are focused together.
Wow.
And the government is helping them a lot. The government gives them a lot of incentives. The government subsidizes. The government helps them a lot.
Wow. Interesting. Communal partnership. In fact, that is something I really cherish about the Chinese people. Personally, even among siblings, it's very hard for me and my siblings to do something together. I just, even my biological siblings, it's very hard. But after coming to China, I just can't understand how the Chinese have been able to manage to partnership with even strangers. They meet somebody for the first time and they are able to partnership and start some business together. What has been the major cause? Like I don't know what enables them to have that strong communal partnership. I just don't get it. And
Okay.
I wish I can have that, and families, Africa as a whole can have that spirit.
Now, there is a policy in China whereby
Yeah.
every government agency is being taxed to
Yes.
drive investment. Whether you are the manager in a hospital, in one way or the other, the government implements a policy whereby you should contribute to development. You should attract investors.
Okay.
It's not something that you can be walking on the street and a Chinese will meet you and then ask you about business opportunity. If you can present a good plan, you will invest. Now, there is what they call this incentive. For every investment that you are able to drive, the government gives you an incentive. The
Yes.
government gives you. So people are moved to expand. People are moved to create companies. People are, when you bring in development in one way or the other, if you bring in investors, if you're able to negotiate
Yes.
certain deals, supply certain quantities out of China, it means you are contributing to development. There is an incentive, and this is available
Yes.
in different countries. So you see, sometimes, like when we came to China,
Yeah.
the government was trying means to bring in a lot of foreigners, and we were being paid to
Yes.
refer foreigners to come to certain universities. And even presently today, if you can refer foreigners to certain universities, you are being paid. Now, sometimes we look at it,
Yes.
hey, up to 1,000 RMB to bring in foreigners. But we forget to know that when foreigner will come, that foreigner is being exposed to the products of China, advertise those products to his siblings, his family, his partners back home. They'll send money to him. Now, when they send money to him, he will buy and
Yes.
supply. So by attracting foreigners, it is another way to expose their market products. As I am here, I can buy something from
Wow.
China and sell back home. Now, if I refer somebody to a university, the university
Yes.
will give me a person. That person who is coming, someday that person will also sell a product. So China is expanding its market by bringing in a lot of students on scholarship.
Wow. Interesting. You have really made me think so much about this scholarship because I really wanted to go to the US, but even how to get scholarship wasn't easy. But with China, it was so easy. So easy to
Very
get a scholarship. And people usually think that, oh, maybe because everything is cheap here, they are not advanced and everything. But you have made me think about this aspect. So, a way to really advance their market. As I've come to China, I can speak their language. I mostly do importation. I buy things to other people in other countries. And that is so smart. Wow. Wonderful. To our viewers who are watching live, if you want to join this discussion, you can join through this link to add your contribution about how China has been able to escape the poverty trap from a poorest country to one of the largest economy in the world. You can comment in the comment section. and we are joined with our special guest, Mr. Eminence. He is a businessman based in China, and if you want to do anything about business, you can contact him and he will help you with that. Sir, in fact, you have really opened our eyes. You have really showed us so many ways that China has been able to advance to this level. These are things, some of them I never thought of. Wonderful. You were talking about scholarships, true scholarships. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, sometimes we wonder, but how does scholarship help the government? It was later on in
yes,
my research that I came to the yeah, apart from apart from the fact that China is exporting in the market, when you get scholarship,
yes,
you get to people who will become leaders tomorrow and will negotiate good deals. You remember, or in 2001, when China entered into the World Trade Organization, America was the dominant trade partner in the world. Over 80% of trade was done through America. And today, out of 190 countries, China has
yes,
dominance in over 129 countries. Then if you look at the map, America is only part of Mexico and the uppermost countries in Latin America, and then in part of Europe. But
yes,
China dominated the world in trade. And why has China been able to dominate the world in trade? This scholarship has contributed because when you come to China, you are exposed to the good in China. And then, when you go back home, China has created, a good environment for you. Tomorrow, when these leaders are coming to negotiate, you are
yes,
more open to them. You are more in China. You are more open to them. You have benefited from the scholarship. So when they are coming for trade deals, you are more open to
yes,
them. If, for example, let me say America gives you scholarship and China gives you scholarship, and you become a leader, and they are coming for trade deals, who will you be open up to? You'll be open up to the person
definitely.
who has
Yes,
a pathway. Therefore, it is also a political establishment which would lead to some economic benefits. China have been able to, to overtake America in business dealing because of what? Because of its open door policy and because of its non-interference. China will come to you. China doesn't care about who is your leader. America has been dominating for America, but today Africa is becoming wary because America wants to control our political system. France wants to control our
yes,
political system. And then when you get loan, those loans are tied to very strict conditions. You must do this, you must do that. China is not interested in that. Take your money, fulfill it, and then pay us back on interest. But then you have to give something so that if you do not pay our money, we are going to pay this thing in return. But when they
yes,
want to give you loan, they will give you certain conditions. Probably a certain percentage of your GP must go on this. Your certain leader must do this. They come in with a lot of policies that tie us. But China is not interested. Take the money, whatever you want to do, get your benefit from it, pay us back our interest. So China has an open policy. China is not interested in who is your leader. China is just interested in economy. But with the West, who is your leader? What is the policy? Does they advance our democratic value? China is not interested in that. And because of this, people have realized that, hey,
yes,
China is a better trading partner. China is a better partner who will not, try to condition you to certain rules, try to tell that you are not democratic. No, no. China gives you the money, whatever you do with it, just ensure that the money is used for a purpose and pay off the interest. But French will say that no, if we are giving you this loan, you will give us a
yes,
certain mining rights in place. You will give us no. China doesn't talk about China negotiates with you. When the deal is settled, it goes and only goes for the return. The other countries will want to, give you certain conditions. You should allow us access to this mining. You should allow us access to this oil well. China doesn't do that. If it is coming for
wow,
deal, it is that deal. It doesn't attach anything to it. And with that, it has been able to surpass America and become the number one trading partner in the world. If you look at the map from few years back and today, you realize that the whole map is now using China as a trading partner. Up from some 2% just trading with America as a major trading partner.
wow. Interesting. I'm sure maybe from their suffering, they also understand how suffering is. So they don't really like to impose much on other countries as compared to yeah.
I wouldn't want to impose, and if you look at it, uh, economically, China is a dynamic society. You know, the politics, and you have lived in China, probably you start after 6 months, they come out with new policy. After 6 months, they come out with
Yes.
new policy. Go to the West have fixed institutions, they have their constitution, it doesn't change. Today, Chinese may discover that, oh, yeah, this policy which has been in place for the past 2 years is not favorable, and they amend it, and then they modify it. This policy is no longer applicable. No, their policies are very dynamic. They are changing and evolving with the nature in which the things are changing. But when you go to the West, their policies are
Yes.
fixed. They have strong institutions. That's one good thing which I admire with the West. They have strong institutions and their policies do not change. Their policies are sometimes
Oh,
stable. But
yeah.
with China, it's very unpredictable. A law which is applicable today, maybe next year becomes obsolete. There is a new law. So it's a dynamic society whereby they study the trend and they are adjusting constantly with the trend. Unlike other places where it is like fixed and static, it doesn't change. It must be that way. And in as much as
Wow.
we, in as much as them, in as much as we
Yes.
know by the West, we own communism or communism. But I think that a communist is responsible for the development of China. If China was a democratic society, it wouldn't have
Yes.
developed the way it is. The communist system has stopped China to develop the way it is today. And therefore, I
Wow.
would say government doesn't have a fixed pattern. What works for you, use it. What doesn't work for you, leave it. If I want to compare something to the
Yeah.
our African,
Before before I even allow you to compare, wow, you have really reminded me of so many things. I've realized that China do not use democracy as compared to other countries. Their economy, every style, even language, they don't have, they use their own language. Every style is almost different from what all other countries are doing. For example, with these apps, they use something different, like how they make their product. Everything is totally different. And probably we can say that has really helped them reach this far. So, in fact, as you said, I really go by that. Every country must consider what can work for them and not what others are doing. Wow.
yeah, yeah, like I say, now I want to make a comparison. Why I say if China
Yes.
was a democratic nation, it will not really have development. Now let's look at let's say Trump comes to America. Trump is talking
Yes.
about building a Biden comes Biden wants to collapse the war and instead bring in more people. So realize that if people will build something, Biden will come and destroy it. Probably the other person who comes in is not in support with Biden's policy, will also destroy what Biden has instituted. So realize that
Yes.
development is not continuous because people put political affiliation ahead of development. But in China, with the party system, the party is one, the party has a goal. You might differ in the way we wish to implement it, but the goal remains the same. But with a democracy, today, probably when I taken as a president, you were the former president. And I thought that you have maltreated my people. So it's time for me to maltreat your own people. Your own policies,
Yes.
I want to score political points so that within the next election, I'll win. So I try to discredit you. You look at that, the
Yes.
communist system has made development to be progressive and continuous. But in America today, they are fighting by all means so that Trump should go to jail. Trump is fighting by all means that Biden should be implicated. So you realize that there is conflict within themselves. Well, that is the matter of democracy. We also have to consider that I'm talking of development. Now, let me quote an
Yes.
example. To bring Biden to govern China today
Yes.
with the policy Biden is using in America, they will succeed.
I don't think so.
Within the next 2 years, China will collapse. But America has a situation whereby even a baby can govern America. Anybody can govern America because the institutions are there. Now you look at
Yes.
something. Communism is very good for the development and advancement of China. Democracy is not good. If democracy
Yes.
comes, a lot of things will not be in place. Therefore, like I say, what works for you, uphold it.
Wow. What works for you, uphold
Uphold it.
it. That is a
If I'm
very powerful quote. This has
if
reminded me of one quote that he said, imitation is limitation. I think so many people who have been imitating others have been limited of what they could have done better and not. Mr. Eminence, you have shared so many things from your personal experience about how China has been able to advance to this stage. Things I never thought of and never imagined or thought of it in that way. You have revealed all these things to us. Thank you very much for sharing these to us. Somebody might be like, why are Africans or blacks discussing about how China has been able to advance to this level? What has China got to do with we blacks and Africans? What is the answer you give to any person asking these kind of questions?
I will tell them that let us look at how China has been able to manage its poverty to a position of affluence. Today we are poor in Africa not because we are poor, but because we do not have say over our resources. Take example for Cameroon. Cameroon was a former French
Yes.
colony. French did not actually grant independence to a former colony.
Okay.
They went into what is colonial park. If you have any natural resource, we have to decide about the natural resource. We have to decide your economic policy. We even have to decide your money. French are free, they don't have autonomy. Their money is
Really?
being produced by a certain percentage of their money is kept within the French treasury. And if you need that money, you go and loan your own money. The
Your own
French
money.
doesn't your own money. So it has a lot. If we can, break through from the shackles of the colonial masters, we would be free. We don't decide our policy. A mineral reserve is discovered today, let us say in Congo. It is discovered today in
Yes.
Burkina Faso. Yeah, well, glory be to God, some countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, they have rebelled. But formally, when it is discovered,
Yes.
it is France who will determine who will mine it. It is France that will determine the
Really?
price. Formerly, France was mining uranium from Burkina Faso, and then they were paying, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the price in the international market is 200 and something dollars. France was paying the $7. So they will take your resource, determine how much they will pay you, extract your resource and go with it, and you have no say. If you want to say they come in with a coup that you are not democratic, you are trying. So you realize that we as Africans, we need to be self-sufficient. China decided to
Yes.
use the cheap oil to attract investors. By attracting
Yes.
investors, their, their people were also learning that at a certain point in time, they started, instituting companies, they started building companies, they started, having that market and taking control. But today, our natural resources are in the hands of our colonial masters. We don't say anything. Now, take for example Ghana. Ghana has provided a frequency for America to use. American
Yes.
soldiers come to Ghana, they don't even need a passport, they don't even need a visa, just with their car. Can such a nonsense
Yes.
happen to a Ghanaian soldier will leave Ghana and go to America without a and
Even
according to
not
the
for a
laws,
visit.
if a Ghanaian, there will be no legal implication. That is slave trade. Our leaders
Yes.
do not speak up. Our leaders are serving the interest of someone else. If we can follow the pattern of China, let's not allow the foreigners to compete with us. If foreign companies are coming, we Africans should have our own representative in that company. We should also be
Yes.
able to learn from the technology, making sure that by the time they leave, we have completely taken over. That will help us develop faster. We should not always be at the mercy of foreign aid. I, for one, I am against 408, and I think the World Bank and International Monetary Fund should be banned in Africa. They are the greatest contributors of poverty in Africa because the money that is being given to us as loan do not go for sustainable development. It goes into the pocket of private individuals. And now the country now needs to pay that loan with interest. Therefore, things like loan aid should be banned because those aid comes with conditions. France will say we are giving you an aid of 10 billion, but they will extract
Yes.
your raw material for 100 billion. So aid, World Bank, International Monetary Fund should be out of Africa. Those are the
Wow.
things we need to drive and promote poverty in Africa. We should send these institutions out. They are not needed in Africa. If Africa must go, we don't need them.
Wow. Mr. Eminence, I can see how passionate you are when you were talking about what Africans should do. Wow. I can see how determined you can see you expect our continent as Africa to also advance, learn several things from China so that we can also advance. I don't really understand that a continent of all the natural resources. If we look at China, China doesn't really have natural resources as we have as a continent Africa, but they have been able to use just market population to advance their country. What are we Africans doing? And my dear people, that is why we are having this discussion, not just to praise China or whatever. We are here to remind any person from developing country or any individual to learn how to be self-sufficient, independent, to use intimidation, suffering in your own advantage. This is what we are expecting. We can't wait to see ourselves as Africans. That a time will come that if we are traveling out of Africa, it's only about having exposure and not greener pastures. Because there's no greener continent than Africa. But here's the case, we leave our continent for greener pastures. Mr. Eminence, I'm so really grateful for how you have been so open about all these things. We have so many Africans who are not willing to say this. So many Africans who have traveled out of Africa and they are not willing to talk about these things. They are okay. I can see how passionate you are about the continent. And I've realized that apart from you even just talking about this, you have created so many things in your country. I was surprised to see you have an e commerce app running in Cameroon, investment running in Cameroon. What really inspires you to do that apart from, in spite of all the challenges? In spite of all the challenges, we have several Africans who invest in their other countries instead of Africa. What has been your motivation, sir? To our viewers who are watching live, yes, we are talking about how China has been able to escape from the poverty trap. If you want to join this live discussion, you can join through the link sent in the description box so that you can add your contribution, any question, suggestion. This is the only live podcast based in China, and every week we try to bring special guests, especially foreigners who has lived in China for several years to share their experience, their personal experience about living in China. And today we are joined with our special guest, Mr. Eminence. He is a businessman based in China and he has lived in China for so many years, and he's sharing with us his personal experience about how China has been able to advance from one of the poorest countries into the richest countries in the world now. And this, why are we even having this discussion? We are having this discussion because we want to educate several people, especially Africans, to learn from the Chinese style to advance our country. Why is it that a continent full of all the natural resources we always travel out of our continent to another country for greener pastures. Meanwhile, there's no greener continent than Africa. This is the reason why we are having this discussion. And to anybody who's watching live and you want to join this live podcast, or call, you can join through the link sent now to add your discussion, ask your suggestions about how China has been able to become one of the largest economy in the world. In the world. This is the only live podcast based in China, a podcast where every week we bring special guests to share their life experience with us. People who have lived in China for several years, sharing their personal experience about living in China, working in China, starting business in China, importing from China. If you want anything about China, you should reach this platform and we will get you through. If you want to start business importation, anything about China, you should rate us and we will get you through that. Yes. So our guest, Mr. Eminence, has shared so many ways China has been able to advance to this level, to this stage, from one of the poorest continent or countries into one of the richest countries in the world. If you are new here, this platform is Dark Show. We have this platform for expats living in China and those outside China. If you need anything from China, you should reach us. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel or follow our pages on all the social media platforms, and we will get you there. So we are talking about how China has been able to advance